I grew up in Aurora, Colorado, and my parents were always the worrying type. They always thought I wasn't ready to live alone. They'd list off small worries, like me forgetting to lock the door or opening it for a stranger and getting robbed. Maybe it came from their own past, or maybe they just couldn't see me as a grown-up. Either way, it drove me nuts. I wanted more than anything to show them they were wrong. So when I turned 20 in June of 2023, I jumped at the chance to move out. I found a small studio apartment not far from Aurora Community College, where I go part-time. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was mine, and I loved it. The front door creaked, the walls were beige, and the little kitchen was tight, but there was something special about having my own place. I finally felt like I was doing something for myself. The first few weeks were normal. I bought cheap furniture from Craigslist and IKEA, hung up some posters, and tried to make the place feel like home. My old TV was a small, boxy thing I'd had for years. It was outdated. The speakers were fuzzy and the screen flickered a lot. I decided to sell it on Craigslist and use the money to get a better one. Something with good sound that didn't crackle every time there was bass. I posted it for a fair price, just $75. Within a few hours, I had a bunch of replies. Most people offered close to what I asked. But one message stood out. A guy named Henry offered me $100, no questions asked. That felt odd since I'd clearly said in the post that I was open to offers. He didn't even try to bargain. He just said he wanted to buy it and would come right away. My parents' warnings popped into my head. Who offers more money than needed on Craigslist for no reason? I thought about asking my friend Lila to come over and hang out while Henry came, just in case. But then I told myself I needed to do this alone. I didn't want to depend on anyone. It was broad daylight, and he just wanted to buy a TV. What could go wrong? Henry and I agreed on a time, 11 a.m. the next Thursday. On Thursday morning, I cleaned the place up and set the TV by the door to make it easier to carry. I texted Henry at 10:30 to confirm. No reply. I waited another hour. Still nothing. I gave up and went on with my day, annoyed that I'd stayed home for no reason. A few days passed and I didn't hear back. I thought maybe I'd just sell the TV to someone else, but school and midterms got in the way. Then one Sunday night, June 25th, I remember clearly. I was about to go to bed when the doorbell rang. It was close to midnight, and that made me nervous. Hardly anyone visits me, and never that late. Right then, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Henry. I'm at your door. Sorry it's late." My heart jumped. I walked slowly to the door and looked through the peephole. There were 3 men standing outside. I could kind of recognize Henry from the small profile picture he'd sent, though it was hard to see clearly, but I had a strong feeling it was him. The other 2 guys looked bigger. Something in my gut said this was all wrong. I quickly texted, "Too late to do this now. Can we do it in the morning?" He replied, "Okay, I'm so sorry. I'll come by tomorrow at 9 a.m. I could hear them whispering outside, but after a few tense moments, they walked away. I stayed frozen in place for a while, waiting and listening. My knees were weak, and I realized I'd been gripping my phone hard. The whole thing felt off. Why would someone show up with 2 other guys that late without warning? But at least they left, so I tried to shake the nervous feeling. I brushed my teeth, turned off the lights, and tried to sleep. Around 2 a.m., just as I was dozing off, I heard loud, violent banging on the door, like someone was slamming into it. My stomach dropped. Every part of me froze. The noise got worse. I heard a crack, like wood breaking. They were trying to break in. I grabbed my phone, heart racing, and tiptoed to the door. Just as I got close, part of the frame broke, and the door burst open so fast that I stumbled backward. The hallway light let me see Henry stepping inside. His face looked panicked and wild. Behind him were the two men from earlier. They seemed even bigger now, maybe because fear was clouding everything. I screamed and ran straight to my bedroom. I slammed the door, locked it, then ran to the bathroom and locked that door too. Two doors between me and them. Hopefully that would help. My hands were shaking so badly I had to try 3 times before I could call 911. The operator's calm voice helped me focus. I whispered that someone had broken in and gave my address. I could hear them moving around in my apartment. One of them shouted, and I thought I heard them kicking at my bedroom or maybe the closet door. Everything sounded messed up and loud. Minutes passed, though it felt way longer. Then I heard sirens and shouting from outside. Things like, "Get down!" and loud footsteps in the hall. I stayed in the bathroom until everything got quiet. Then I peeked out and saw police officers in the living room. One of them came over and helped me out of the apartment. The front door was broken and hanging loosely. Some of my stuff was scattered around. Later that night, the police told me they had caught Henry and the other two just as they were trying to run off with a bag full of my things. My laptop, video games, even cheap jewelry. My TV was still by the door, half wrapped in an old blanket. It was crazy to see my things like that. One of the officers explained that Henry and his friends had been watched before for shady Craigslist deals, but they'd never been caught in the act. Their trick was to offer more money to get people interested fast. They targeted people who seemed alone, especially women. If they couldn't get inside easily, they'd break in. They had been doing this around Denver and Aurora for a while. Hearing that hit me hard. I had ignored so many warning signs just because I wanted to prove something. I wanted to show I was grown up and independent. I remember a police officer looking at me kindly as he handed me back a pair of earrings the guys had dropped outside. "You got lucky," he said softly. "We got here just in time." I nodded, still shocked. My legs felt weak, and my head was full of what-ifs. What if I had opened the door at midnight? What if I couldn't call 911 fast enough? The rest of the night was a blur, giving my statement, filling out paperwork, listening to my landlord complain about the door. By the time it was over, the sun was coming up. I sat in my living room, staring at where the door used to shut properly, and realized how right my parents had been all along. I used to get annoyed when they doubted me, but now I could almost hear my mom saying, "You can't be too careful." She was right. Maybe they just knew how the world works better than I did. Maybe I needed that wake-up call. That feeling of being unsafe hasn't really gone away since. Sometimes at night, when I hear small creaks in the walls or pipes, I wonder if someone's outside testing the lock again. It's not paranoia. It's knowing people like Henry really exist. That's what stays with me the most. Even though Henry seemed nice and normal in messages, used polite words, and never threatened me, until the moment he broke in, I almost let him in. All because I wanted to prove something. Before we dive into the next story, if you're visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell icon to stay updated with our upcoming scary stories. I always wanted to be a quarterback growing up in Phoenix, Arizona. My dream was to throw winning passes under Friday night lights. But my dad, a retired Army captain, believed discipline was most important. He saw I had potential, just not on a football field. By 18, instead of trying out for a college team, I ended up joining the local police academy. I guess I traded one uniform for another. I won't lie, I do sometimes think about what might have been, but I started to like working in law enforcement. I liked the structure, the clear purpose. My dad and I argued a lot, but he was proud when he saw me in uniform. I worked hard and eventually became a detective in the Phoenix Police Department, focusing mostly on organized crime. In May 2007, I made an arrest that put me on the front page of local newspapers. I pulled over a white Chevy Suburban at 2 a.m. for driving suspiciously near the edge of Maricopa County. The driver turned out to be Ronnie Red Alvarez, the suspected leader of a burglary gang that had been robbing homes around the area. A tip from an informant had me on alert that night, so when I saw the Suburban parked without headlights, I followed my instincts and stopped it. It started like a normal traffic stop but got intense quickly. I ended up arresting him by myself. It felt like a major win, like making the final play in a big game. Not long after that arrest, strange things started happening. My wife Ava and I have a 9-year-old son named Connor. One afternoon, just a week after Alvarez's court date, Connor didn't come home from school. At first, I thought he stayed late for soccer practice, but when I called the school, they said they hadn't seen him. Sure, here's your text rewritten in simpler and easier wording with the same length and structure carefully maintained. My stomach twisted, and I rushed out, checking every hallway and talking to the few teachers still around. But Connor was nowhere. I put out an alert, got help from my fellow officers, and we started a citywide search. Everyone at the department worked nonstop. We put up flyers, checked every camera we could find, and even brought in the FBI's local team. Days passed with no sign of Connor. I had never felt fear like that before. My chest felt empty all the time, and I could barely sleep. Every hour that passed without finding him made it harder to breathe. On the 6th day, we got a tip. Someone said Alvarez's gang might have taken Connor to get back at me for arresting him. His group had people all over the state. I pushed myself harder than ever, talking to old informants, chasing every clue, running on pure panic and little sleep. But every lead went cold. No one saw anything. No one called. No ransom. It was like my son had disappeared into thin air. The nights were the worst. I'd lay awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling fan, blaming myself. Sure, Alvarez was locked up, but maybe his gang wanted revenge. That guilt stuck inside me like a heavy stone. Ava tried to comfort me, but we both felt completely helpless. Then, 10 days after Connor went missing, I was at home alone, going through old case files, desperate to find something I missed. Ava had gone to stay at her sister's for the night. She needed a break. Around midnight, I heard a soft sound downstairs. My heart started beating faster, but I tried to stay calm. The house makes noises sometimes, and I was on edge. Then I heard another sound, louder this time. It came from the basement. The basement door is in the hallway near the kitchen. I hadn't been down there in days, so I figured maybe something fell or a pipe had broken. I grabbed a flashlight and started down slowly, one step at a time, trying to stay calm. At the bottom, I turned on the light. At first, everything looked normal, just old boxes, holiday stuff, photo albums. But then I heard a quiet whimper from behind a stack of boxes. My throat went dry. I walked closer, stepping past an old broken coffee table we'd meant to throw out. And there in the far corner was Connor. He was tied up, ropes around his wrists and ankles, an old cloth over his mouth. His eyes met mine, filled with fear and relief. I almost collapsed right there. My head spun from shock, fear, and relief all at once. I pulled myself together just enough to get the gag off and untie him. He held on to me, shaking so badly I could feel his heart beating through his chest. When he finally spoke, his voice was weak and rough. He told me he'd been picked up from school by our housemaid Jackson. Connor always knew Jackson. We'd hired him months ago through a cleaning service since Ava and I worked long hours. Connor thought nothing of it when Jackson offered him a ride. But then they drove somewhere strange. Jackson locked him in a dark place. Connor didn't know where it was, but he remembered hearing them talk about me. Something about revenge. I ran upstairs, gun in hand, and searched every room. Jackson was gone. I called the station, trying to keep my voice calm as I explained what happened. In minutes, patrol cars were all over the place, searching everything. But there was no sign of him. It was like he vanished. Over the next few days, we found out the truth. Jackson was never hired through any agency. His papers were fake. He had lied his way into our home just to get close to my family. His real name wasn't Jackson at all. He was an ex-con, and he had ties to Alvarez's gang. The more we found out, the worse it got. Everything had been planned from the beginning. It took almost 2 full weeks of nonstop work to finally catch him. A hiker in Tonto National Forest saw someone acting strangely near an old broken-down hunting cabin off an unmarked trail. My partner and I led a team out there at sunrise. The place was falling apart, roof caving in, windows shattered. We moved in slowly, weapons ready. The tension in the air was heavy. It felt like the moment before a big football play, but this time, someone's life was on the line. Inside, we found Jackson alone, going through boxes filled with stolen items. He tried to reach for something, maybe a weapon, but we got to him quickly. We cuffed him, and I finally got to look him in the eyes. He didn't say a word. No apology, no begging, just a cold stare. That was worse than any scream. Standing in that dark, broken cabin, I realized this man had come into my home on purpose to destroy it. At the station, Jackson refused to talk. He denied everything. Alvarez stayed silent too, even from prison. In time, our case got wrapped into a bigger investigation about the whole gang. I had my son back, thank God, but we were never the same. Connor couldn't be alone anymore, not even for a minute. Ava and I couldn't handle staying in that house. We listed it for sale. Every noise and shadow made our skin crawl. Sometimes late at night, I think back to the night I stopped Alvarez. It felt like a big win. But in the end, it cost me more than I ever expected. That gang used my own house against me. The scariest part is not knowing how many people were part of it. Some of them could have been people I saw every day, people I trusted. That's the part that still echoes in my mind. Even now, when a floor creaks or my phone rings late, I feel a shot of panic, because I know there could still be others out there, watching, planning. Maybe they're just names on files, or maybe they're blending into normal life, like Jackson did, waiting for the right time to strike. I keep thinking about how easily he got close to my family, how smart he was at pretending to be harmless. If something like that happened once, couldn't it happen again? And if I, a trained detective, was fooled in my own house, what chance do other people have? That's what really haunts me. I used to work night shifts at a small warehouse just outside Sacramento, California. I started in April 2022. My shift was from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and honestly, it wasn't too bad. The place stayed pretty quiet at night, peaceful even, just me and a few others packing boxes and handling inventory. My boss, Mike Evans, was someone you'd instantly trust. He was in his late 40s, wore glasses, and always dressed in a clean shirt and jeans. He had a fatherly vibe. On my first night, he shook my hand with a big smile and helped me get settled in. Mike often brought us coffee or snacks and always asked how we were doing, like he really cared. I liked him. Everyone did. For months, everything went smoothly. I got used to the routine: clock in, get coffee, do the work, chat a little with coworkers. Mike would usually stay until midnight just to make sure things were going okay before heading home. Life felt simple and safe. At least that's what I thought. By mid-August, something changed. Mike started staying later, sometimes until 1 or 2 a.m. He'd stay locked in his office with the blinds shut. It was weird, but we figured he was just busy. But over time, he started to change. He stopped smiling, looked tense, and sometimes sighed loudly in frustration. One night in September, around 3 a.m., I stepped out back for some air. It was cold and quiet. That's when I noticed Mike's truck parked way off in the lot, hidden behind some dumpsters. He usually parked near the front. I saw him inside, talking angrily on the phone, waving his hands around. He looked really upset, nothing like the calm boss I knew. I quietly went back inside, unsure what I had just seen. Maybe he was just dealing with personal stuff. We all have bad days. But from then on, things got weirder. He showed up late, sometimes after midnight, and went straight to his office. He stopped talking much and sometimes got angry over small mistakes. The same guy who used to bring us donuts now barely even looked at us. Then the rumors started. Some coworkers said they saw people coming in late at night, people they didn't recognize. One guy, Alex, said he saw Mike handing sealed boxes to people in vans around 4 a.m. It sounded sketchy, but Mike didn't seem like someone who'd do something like that. I figured maybe people were just bored and letting their imaginations run wild. But then I remembered the phone calls, the late truck meetings, and the stress on his face. Something didn't feel right. Then came the night just before Halloween. I stayed late to help with a big pile of orders. It was around 4:30 a.m., and I thought I was alone. As I moved some boxes, I heard voices coming from Mike's office. The door was a little open. I stepped closer, barely breathing. Mike was inside with two men I'd never seen before. They looked rough. They were leaning over his desk, looking at something, stacks of cash. Mike's face was serious, cold, nothing like the guy I'd known. My heart pounded. I backed away and pretended to keep working. A few minutes later, the two men left through the back door, glancing at me on the way out. Mike never left his office that night. The next morning, he was back to normal, smiling, giving out coffee, like nothing had happened. It messed with my head. I kept thinking I had imagined it, but the memory wouldn't go away, him counting cash while strangers watched. Soon after, Alex quit with no real reason. He barely said goodbye. That felt strange, like maybe he had seen too much. Then one night in November, around 3:45 a.m., I was alone again, finishing some work. Mike hadn't shown up, which was becoming more common. Suddenly, I heard the loading dock door open. No deliveries were expected. I heard slow, heavy steps. I grabbed a box cutter and hid behind a shelf. The footsteps stopped near Mike's office. I peeked out. It was Mike. He looked messy, like he hadn't slept. He unlocked his office and rushed inside, leaving the door open. Then came loud noises, drawers slamming, papers scattering. He was searching for something. I felt sick. Was he looking for files? Money? Did he know someone was still there? Finally, he ran out with a thick envelope held tight to his chest. He looked around nervously, then took off in his truck. He never came back. No one heard from him again. His phone went straight to voicemail. Rumors spread quickly. Some said he fled to Mexico. Others thought something worse. Soon the police came asking about stolen shipments and shady stuff. Turns out Mike had been using the warehouse to move stolen goods. Months passed. I quit too. I couldn't stand being there, not knowing who might walk through the doors looking for Mike or for something he left behind. Even now when I'm alone at night, I think about Mike, the friendly boss with two sides. One side we all saw. The other, a secret life full of danger, was hidden. The scariest part, not what I saw, but everything I didn't. Mike had two faces, and I only ever saw the good one clearly. The other one, the one tied to criminals and late-night deals, was just a shadow hiding behind his smile. The thought that still gives me chills is this. How well do we really know the people we trust? The windows were broken and covered in graffiti on the old brick building. A heavy chain and padlock kept the front doors shut, but we spotted a broken window on the side with enough room to crawl through. Inside, the place smelled like mold and old air. Our flashlights cut through the thick dust floating in the air. Pieces of drywall were scattered everywhere, and old rusty machines sat in the corners, quiet and unused. We kept our voices low without thinking about it. Talking normally in there felt wrong, like something might be listening. We began exploring the first floor carefully, trying not to fall into the holes in the concrete. There were old offices with caved-in ceilings, yellowed papers lying everywhere, and desks that had been broken for years. I found an old ledger from 1978 listing fabric shipments. Reading those notes made the place feel alive again. People had worked here every day, typing at these desks, and then one day it all just stopped. Mitch and I decided to check out the upper floors and found a rusty metal staircase near the back. Each step groaned loudly under our feet, the sound echoing way too much. When we got to the second floor, we entered a wide open space with rows of flipped-over sewing tables. The broken windows let in a cold wind, and pieces of plastic sheet hung from above, flapping slowly like creepy decorations. I remember thinking the place felt frozen in time, like stepping into a moment from years ago. Part of me wanted to leave, but I also felt pulled in, like the emptiness had its own voice. We kept going and came across an old elevator shaft that was open. The elevator itself was missing, just a deep black hole stretching down. Mitch tossed a small piece of debris inside, and we counted a few seconds before it hit the bottom. We made sure to stay far away from that spot. Things started getting strange on the third floor. We noticed footprints in the dust. Someone had walked through not too long ago. It was hard to say how recent they were, but they weren't ours, and they led to a hallway that turned off to the right. We followed, flashlights shaking slightly, unsure what we might find. Maybe other explorers, or maybe someone living there. I wasn't exactly scared yet, but I was definitely nervous. As we turned the corner, we saw a door at the end of the hallway. Something shiny caught the outside light from under it. Mitch and I stopped. Neither of us said anything. The footprints ended suddenly, as if the person had just vanished. There wasn't a side door or crack in the wall where they could have gone. I felt my heartbeat speeding up. The silence felt too complete, except for the soft dripping of water behind us. Mitch tapped my shoulder and pointed down. There was a flashlight on the floor, like someone dropped it and left it there. I bent down and picked it up. The battery still worked. When I pressed the button, it flickered dimly. Right then, we heard a slow scraping noise coming from down the hallway near the door. It sounded like something heavy being dragged across the floor. We froze. Mitch motioned for me to turn off my flashlight, and I did. We stood in total darkness listening. The scraping continued, slow and steady. I leaned forward, trying to see anything. My eyes adjusted enough to make out that the door was slightly open. There was no light inside, just deep blackness. I thought about calling out, but that sound made me stop. It didn't feel right. Then the noise stopped. Everything went quiet again. Mitch signaled we should turn back. Normally, I might have wanted to keep going, but something in my gut told me we shouldn't. We backed away as quietly as possible, moving faster now. When we reached the stairs, my hands were shaking. We hurried down to the first floor, nearly slipping on broken drywall. Once we got outside, we jogged back to the car without speaking. Only when we were locked inside did I finally ask Mitch if he'd seen anything in that doorway. He just shook his head. I turned the key, started the car, and we drove. Story 2. Offering psychic readings to people online, Sharon soon found herself making decent money. She also made a deal to get a share of the earnings from other services, some of which used expensive premium rate phone numbers she promoted on her websites. In just a few short months, Sharon had turned their home computer into a small business, showing she clearly understood the endless opportunities the internet offered for making money. But sadly, in her mission to support her family, Sharon started exploring darker parts of the web. Not the Let's Read YouTube channel. Just kidding. In truth, she began diving into the shady side of the internet. Even in the early days of the internet, adult entertainment was already a big and growing industry. It had discovered the potential of reaching huge audiences and using paid subscriptions. Sharon saw the same thing and realized there was a high demand for adult content online. With her natural talent in marketing, she started offering her help to various adult content distributors and was once again welcomed because of her valuable skills. Before long, Sharon noticed a trend in viewer behavior. The more extreme the adult material was, such as scenes involving restraints, hypnosis, or even chloroform, the more money people were willing to pay. She realized she could earn double or even triple her usual pay for the same kind of work. For her, it was a simple decision. Using the fake name Nancy Carlson, Sharon raised her earnings even further. Her husband was pleased with the money coming in, especially as Sharon's work shifted into darker and more shocking territory. She began selling her used underwear online, and this is where things started to become more personal than professional. The character of Nancy Carlson turned into a full online persona. While spending time in explicit chat rooms, Sharon would pretend to be a 300-pound dominatrix who starred in several adult movies. It's believed that Sharon, under this identity, offered certain online chat services in exchange for money, further adding to her growing income. But something eventually changed, and things took a disturbing turn. Sharon began posting ads online that described her deepest fantasy: being kidnapped, tortured, and killed by a masked stranger. She wrote these posts so convincingly that they drew a lot of attention. Some people said they wanted to help make her fantasy come true. Others, like a user named Tanith, were disturbed by her behavior. Tanith claimed to be an online activist and warned Sharon that her actions could lead to serious consequences. But Sharon didn't say her posts were just fantasies or marketing. She responded instead, "I want the real thing. I did not ask for you to preach to me." It was Sunday morning, October 13th, 1996, when Sharon told her husband she was taking a trip to Georgia to visit some old friends. Her husband wished her a safe journey and carried on with his day. But Sharon never went to Georgia. Instead, she drove for about 45 minutes toward Baltimore's Pennsylvania station and eventually arrived in Charlotte, North Carolina at around 8:45 p.m. That same evening, Sharon's husband found a handwritten note on the kitchen table. While the full note hasn't been shared, it's known that she asked her husband not to look for her and added, "If my body's never retrieved, don't worry. Know that I'm at peace." Her husband rushed to tell the police that she was missing and possibly in danger, but by then, it was already too late. Sharon had already met up with the man she made a disturbing arrangement with, Robert Glass. Robert Frederick Glass had lived a quiet, uneventful life for nearly 16 years, working as a computer analyst for the local government in Catawba County. He was married to a woman named Sherry, and they had 3 children together. Their marriage lasted a happy 14 years until May 1996, when Sherry discovered disturbing emails in Robert's account after logging onto his computer. These emails were shocking and violent. Using online names like Toy Man and Slowand, Robert had been visiting adult chat rooms for years. But it wasn't innocent chatting. He seemed fascinated by causing harm and pain, and his words suggested he might actually act on it. Sherry quickly filed for divorce, and Robert lost all access to his kids. This loss devastated Robert, but instead of trying to rebuild his life, he went deeper into his dark fantasies. Over the following months, he became more obsessed with violence and the idea of harming others. Then in August of 1996, he found one of Sharon's disturbing posts. The two quickly fell into an obsessive online relationship. In just over a month, they exchanged around 900 pages of emails and agreed to a horrifying plan. They would meet, spend a few final days acting out disturbing fantasies, and then Robert would end Sharon's life. During the missing persons investigation, detectives got access to Sharon's computer. There, they found all her emails with Robert Glass. Maryland police contacted their colleagues in North Carolina, who then began watching Glass's house. Officers kept the house under surveillance for 24 hours, but they didn't see Sharon. Then, on October 25th, a judge approved a search warrant and police went into Glass's home. Inside, they found several of Sharon's personal items, along with bondage gear and drug paraphernalia. They also found a .357 Magnum handgun and computer disks containing child pornography. But the worst discovery came when they searched the backyard. About 75 feet from the house, police uncovered human remains buried under the soil. It was Sharon Liatka. Robert Glass was arrested while at work. He was charged with first-degree murder and held without bond in Caldwell County Jail. He later pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and exploitation charges on January 27, 2000, receiving a prison sentence of 3 to 6 years in the Avery Mitchell Correctional Institution. He was also sentenced to an extra 27 months on federal charges related to minor exploitation, to be served one after the other. In an interview during his sentence, Robert admitted to playing out Sharon's torture fantasy, but claimed her death was not on purpose. "I don't know how much I pulled the rope," he said, "but I never wanted to kill her." North Carolina's chief state medical examiner, John Butts, agreed that her strangling might have been an accident, but police believed otherwise. They said the killing was planned, and with 900 pages of emails, they had enough proof to show that Sharon's murder was not only intentional, but carefully arranged in advance. Sharon's case was likely the first time a person had been arrested based only on email evidence. Afterward, most news reports focused on how dangerous it can be to meet strangers online. Some people even asked for new internet censorship laws to help stop murders like Sharon's. But Scott Bradner, a consultant at Harvard University's Office of Information Technology, strongly disagreed. He said blaming the internet itself was wrong. According to him, it's the fear of new technology that leads people to call it evil. Sharon's story may highlight the dangers of spending too much time online, but her problems weren't new. Back in 1791, in London, a Czech composer named František Tara hired a sex worker named Susanna Hill. After dinner, he paid her 2 shillings and asked her to castrate him. She refused that part but agreed to choke him during sex. He ended up dying. This early case of what we now call sexual asphyxiation led to a trial. But after hearing the details, the jury let Susanna go free. Robert Glass, on the other hand, didn't get any such sympathy. He served his sentence at the Avery Mitchell Correctional Institution in North Carolina. For 2 years, he acted like a model inmate, showing signs of guilt and remorse. That guilt may have become too heavy for him. On February 20th, 2002, just 2 weeks before he was supposed to be released, he suffered a major heart attack. He was taken to Spruce Pine Community Hospital but died shortly after at exactly 1:30 a.m. His death closed a truly frightening chapter in the history of online crime and served as a harsh reminder of what can happen when disturbing fantasies are brought to life. Story 3. In the early morning hours of a cool September day, back in 1998, the quiet town of Charbury in Oxfordshire, England, was disturbed by the low rumble of police vans pulling up outside a small 2-story home on Crabber Villas. The old house, a worn-down Victorian-style building with chipped paint and a small front lawn, was the last known address of their target. The man living there was believed to be alone and very paranoid. He kept strange hours and often used different doors when leaving or entering, just in case someone was following him. A police dog team waited in case he tried to escape through the back garden, which led into thick woods surrounding the town. Acting on a lead from the FBI, the raid was scheduled for exactly 5 a.m., a time when only farmers would be awake in the area. Oxfordshire police had gathered a large collection of clues, including private emails and data from computers. It all pointed to this house on Crabber Villas, and its occupant being part of a massive worldwide ring of child-abusing cybercriminals. At 4:55 a.m., 12 officers in tactical gear gathered outside the house. One of them banged on the door and shouted, "Police! Open the door now!" There was no answer. Moments later, a battering ram smashed the lock, and officers stormed inside. The bottom floor was filthy, with piles of old newspapers and dirty dishes. The air smelled strongly of stale cigarettes. Flashlights swept across the dark rooms as they carefully searched the ground floor, clearing both the kitchen and the living room. Upstairs, they found 28-year-old Ian Baldock in the back bedroom. He had just woken up and was trying to quickly put on a jacket. "Hands up, don't move," an officer yelled. Baldock froze. His face went pale in the flashlight beam. He knew it was over and that he couldn't get away. By 6:30 a.m., as the first light of day touched the village, Baldock was being taken away in a police van. Neighbors peeked through their curtains, whispering about the strange man they had seen only rarely in town. Never at local places like Ye Old Three Horseshoes pub. The peaceful morning was now broken, with police tape around the house and officers standing watch while forensic experts entered to take away Baldock's computer. This arrest was the result of many months of careful detective work, and Baldock would turn out to be the first piece of a larger puzzle. His arrest helped bring down one of the world's biggest child abuse networks. This is the story of Operation Cathedral. It began in 1998 and became an important turning point in the fight against online child exploitation. Its focus was a secretive global child abuse group called the Wonderland Club, which operated only through the internet. The name taken from the children's story, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, by Lewis Carroll, hid a horrible truth. The group was a massive ring of people who made, shared, and traded child abuse material in huge amounts. The investigation involved many countries working together and not only broke up the group but also revealed just how hard it is to deal with internet crimes, especially back when the internet was still new to most people. The early clues that led to Operation Cathedral came from the U.S. in 1996. The FBI, while looking into another cybercrime case, found signs of a large child abuse ring. That discovery became part of a larger project the FBI was working on called Innocent Images, which aimed to fight the growing issue of child abuse online. As the case grew, they realized that the people they were watching weren't acting alone. They were part of a much bigger, well-organized network known as the Wonderland Club. The Wonderland Club wasn't just a random group of sick individuals. It had a strict structure with serious rules for joining. To get in, new members had to provide at least 10,000 child abuse images, and the pictures had to be new to the group, not already in circulation. This rule made the group's image collection grow very quickly, eventually becoming one of the largest in history. The members used encrypted messages to stay hidden and kept their real identities secret. The club was organized like a pyramid, with ranks based on how many and how disturbing the images were. People with higher ranks could see more exclusive content. Investigators later found that members were spread across at least 14 different countries. Because of this, the FBI contacted police forces around the world to build a global plan. The UK's National Crime Agency led the effort in partnership with the FBI and other countries. This cooperation was key because internet crimes often cross national borders, and no one country could handle something this big alone. One of the hardest parts of the investigation was the way the Wonderland Club hid its activity. Members used special services that removed identifying information from emails and protected their communications with strong encryption. Also, the group didn't have a single server or central website, making it impossible to shut down with one action. Instead, members shared files directly with each other through private networks. To break through these defenses, police used both old-school detective work and new technology. Undercover officers pretended to be new members and slowly earned the group's trust. Once inside, they could start gathering evidence. But this was dangerous work. If the members got suspicious, they could shut down or hide even deeper in the internet's hidden corners. Another problem was the massive amount of material the police had to go through. The club's collection was believed to include more than 250,000 images and around 1,800 videos, all saved on various types of digital storage. Sorting through all of this to identify the children and the abusers took time, training, and special tools. The investigators had to build new software to group and match images to known victims. And while the mission had good intentions, it also raised tough questions. Undercover agents sometimes had to look at, or even pass along, abuse material to keep their cover, which sparked debates about whether they were accidentally helping the abuse happen. To manage this, police put very strict rules in place. Officers' actions were carefully monitored, and the focus stayed on rescuing children and arresting those responsible. Still, the entire situation brings to mind a famous quote from Friedrich Nietzsche's, "Beyond good and evil, he who fights with monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss gazes also into you." After 2 years of non-stop work, Operation Cathedral came to a dramatic end with a series of coordinated raids on September 2nd, 1998. Police from 13 countries, including the UK, the US, Germany, Italy, and Australia, carried out searches and made arrests at the same time. This timing was important. It prevented the group members from warning each other or deleting files. More than 100 people were arrested, and tons of digital evidence was taken, including computers and hard drives. One of the most well-known arrests was of a British man named Gary Salt, who played a major role in the club. His home had a huge amount of child abuse material. He was later sentenced to 12 years in prison for his crimes. In the U.S., one man from California was found with more than 100,000 images on his computer. Some of the best news to come from the raids was that several abused children were identified and saved, including a 10-year-old American girl whose photos were found in a member's collection. This proved the real-world value of the operation. It didn't just shut down a crime ring, it actually saved children from harm. Even though the operation was a major win, the court results varied a lot depending on the country. In the UK, some members got long prison terms. Gary Salt got 12 years, but another man named David Hines was given just 2.5 years. In the US, sentences were usually tougher. Some people received up to 20 years in prison, even for smaller roles in the club. But not everyone was convicted. In some cases, there wasn't enough proof, or legal loopholes caused the charges to be dropped. Still, that outcome helped highlight weaknesses in child protection laws, especially in places where the rules hadn't caught up with the scale of online crime. This led to new demands for stronger laws and better teamwork between countries. Slowly but surely, the gaps are being filled, and the system is improving. Operation Cathedral also changed the way police work on online crimes. It became a blueprint for other big investigations like Operation Avalanche in 2001 and Operation Ore in 2002, both of which aimed to take down similar groups. In the years that followed, many countries launched projects to improve internet safety. These included public information campaigns and new software tools to stop people from accessing illegal material. The operation also made people more aware of how dangerous the internet can be for children and showed that education and protection are essential to keep them safe. By taking apart the Wonderland Club, law enforcement didn't just arrest criminals, they also rescued victims and prevented future harm. The work done during Operation Cathedral still matters today. It shows how far we've come in stopping online child abuse and how much work is still ahead. As the internet changes and grows, the tools and strategies to fight back must keep up. But with teamwork, new ideas, and strong resolve, even the most secret and dangerous online groups can be stopped. Hey friends, thanks for listening. Click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. I release new videos every Monday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and there are super fun live streams on Sundays and Wednesday nights. If you got a story, be sure to submit them over at my email at letsreadsubmissions@gmail.com. Mail to letsreadsubmissions@gmail.com. And maybe even hear your story featured on the next video. And if you want to support me even more, grab early access to all future narrations and bonus content over on Patreon, or click that big join button to hear about the extra perks for members of the channel. And check out the Let's Read podcast, where you can hear all of these stories in big compilations located anywhere you listen to podcasts. All links in the description below. Thanks so much, friends, and remember to always work your front glutes.